Welcome, everybody, to our first study group, Mondays, 11 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, here on Skype Live. My name is Jona Bryndis, as you know, and this is a new addition to our Sacred Self-Healing community. We have live meditations and energy talks, and today I wanted to take the opportunity to add a study group. This study group is designed to talk about some of these spiritual concepts that we encounter, let's say it that way, in our practical life on a deeper level. All right, and I will use the Sacred Self-Healing steps as reference. Yeah, these Sacred Self-Healing steps are those meditations that we do, 24, 21 of them released, and we will discuss things that you want to talk about or that I pick based on the topics that we encounter here through collective energies. Now, who of you was in the Connect with Your True Self transmission on Sunday? Yesterday. God, that's only been a day ago. All right, so there was a really interesting topic that arose in that session, and I would like to take today's study group to go a little deeper. The reason why I think it makes sense to address these aspects of self-expression that came up in our connecting process is because it's something that we can experience every day. So let me just give you a summary, even if you weren't there, it's not important right now, but if you were there, you had your own experience with this. So in the connecting process, and this can happen to you in the meditation, this can happen to you every day, as a matter of fact, we came across a barrier, a resistance, and that resistance was identified as issues with self-expression, issues with, the authenticity that we display throughout our life, throughout our day. And this is something that many of us struggle with because we have to make compromises, such as take on jobs that we don't necessarily like, or we find ourselves in relationships that we don't necessarily enjoy. This can be relationships with family members, but also partners sometimes, where we have commitments, where we have duties that we prioritize over our true needs, our true wants, our authentic self. And as you know, this is a very practical issue. This can be experienced every day. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Issues with authenticity. Who of you has ever or has ever been in that situation where you meet a person or where you have to interact maybe with doctors, like in your case, Dippy, or with colleagues, with family members, or even friends at times, where we feel a little challenged to fully connect. Now, yes, you all gave me the thumbs up here because this is something that we start experiencing at a very, very early stage. I'd say like pretty much an elementary age, right? Where we hold parts of ourselves back, or where we present ourselves in a way that we believe is easier for others to connect with. Yeah, in other words, that other people would like more. So latest in middle school, in our teenage years, where the main goal of our developmental process is to individuate ourselves and find ourselves in this world. latest then, we all start to form something like a persona. Yeah, like the person that we present to the world. So from a spiritual perspective, and also from a psychological perspective, but spiritually seen, this is an issue of self-expression. Okay? Yeah, and there is not a combination, but there is a connection here between how we see ourselves, how we present ourselves to the world, and then, of course, how the world responds to us. Yeah, it's this interaction, this feedback through interacting with the world. And all is fine if the way we present ourselves, if the way we interact with the world is based on who we truly are, what our true needs are, what our true wants are, what our true thoughts are, what our true emotions are, what our true feelings are, and what our true will is. Now, this is maybe a tricky question for you, but highly self-reflective. Percentage-wise, how much do you actually present yourself as your authentic you, as your true self throughout a day? Who would like to guess? It's a guess. Percentage-wise, out of all the hours of the day that you interact with the world, out of all these wake times, these wake hours.
I'm guessing it could be as small as 10%.
Yeah, that's the number that comes up for me as well. Yeah, Cindy.
10%, yeah.
Does that? I mean, we're just guessing here, and this can be different for everyone. I mean, depending on our age, there is an age component to that. Yeah. When we're very young, we have a tendency to be quite authentic, and then all that kind of gets muddled up. And then when we get older, I don't know if you noticed this with real old people, they stop caring what other people think about them, and they actually become more authentic. Have you noticed that? Yeah. So there's like dynamics here, but I think your guess is as good as mine, Jared, Cindy, Julianne. I think this is pretty accurate. It's only 10% roughly. Who are these people or situations where we tend to be more authentic with?
Definitely with our children and family.
Your close family, right? The family that we choose to be around. Who of you finds themselves extremely not authentic with family members that they don't choose to be around with? Yeah. So we can't really say family, Julianne, because there are some family members, I think, where we all have all our guards up, right? All our guards, maybe even more than to strangers or colleagues or, random people in our life. Okay. So if that is the case, that means that 90% of the day, we are presenting someone that we are not. Okay. So if we follow into this rabbit hole now, that means that what we cultivate throughout the day is not our true self. Is that right? I mean, just by statistics. So whether it's 20% or whether it's 10% that we're actually authentic. By the way, most people can only be authentic when they're on their own. Anybody here who feels that way? That they can't be authentic with anybody and that they mostly just seek to be alone so that they can feel their own authentic true self. This isn't uncommon, guys. Yeah, especially in this day and age Yeah, where so much of what we present and on the outside is being judged or used, for other purposes. Yeah. So 90% of what we cultivate, can we work with this number just for arbitrarily here to get the point across? Yeah. The majority of time we are cultivating something or somebody that we're not. So what does this mean now in regard to the responses that we get back from others? Who are the others? Who is the world responding to? Are they responding to us, to the authentic, the true selves that we are? Or are they rather responding to and interacting with the false self that we are?
Well, they're responding to the false self, which means the feedback that we get from the external world is skewed.
That's a very, very important insight that you're having there, Jared. We believe, though, that they are responding to our true self, don't we? We believe that. So any type of criticism, any type of judgment, any type of commentary that comes from others, we take this to heart as if it was meant to respond to our true self. So here is a very important self-awareness process that most of us never actually do. When we go out into this world and we feel, let's say, underloved, undervalued, underappreciated, judged, you name it, what is the majority of that experience? Yeah, let's say the experience itself is real. That's how you experience it. But what is that addressed to? It's addressed to your false self. So when we go out into this world and we try to, I don't know, be successful socially, economically, can somebody define what it means to be successful socially? What does this look like? Let me get the dog inside real quick. Just 1 second. What does it mean like to be socially successful in an ideal world? What would this be like?
Are you talking about an ideal, like the perfect nirvana society?
you mean
where
when
everybody
everything?
loves everybody and
Okay,
kumbaya?
hang on. Those are your preferences. Okay, so let's be clear here. In a perfect world where everybody is truthful, okay, does not automatically mean that everybody loves everybody and everybody's singing kumbaya. Let's just be clear about this. Okay, so in your perfect world, it would be like this. So for you, success is associated with everybody loving everybody, which includes you, right? And everybody singing kumbaya, which includes you, right?
I like that idea, but it's definitely not realistic.
Okay, but I mean, you can say it in different ways. To be successful, you can use other descriptors. You could say things like everybody loves everybody, okay, where everybody can live together in peace. Yeah. So,
Yes.
right? Does that work, Cindy? Where you say, like, for me, success is where I can live in peace. use I statements, where I can live in peace with other people. And I don't know, that's
respect
respect
each other's views.
I don't know, on second thought, would you really want to sing Kumbaya with everybody?
No, I was just throwing out the question.
No,
I don't even do that, even with myself. I like a good tantrum once in a while.
So you said something about respect. You said something about peace. So these would be the measure sticks, the benchmarks that you would use to determine whether you live in, in your life in a way that you would determine as, successful is maybe a little bit too performance oriented, but, that would make you feel like you were in harmony, you were connected with the world. This would be a world that you could connect with.
Yes.
And in that case, you would be more willing to be your true self at all times.
Yes.
Okay. What else? What are some other imaginations of the world that would make you feel you can be yourself? Totally. Maybe not 100%, but let's say reverse the whole thing and say 90% of the time you're your true self and only 10% you have to present a persona. Go ahead.
Less judgment.
Can you use descriptors that don't have negations? What is a world that is less judgmental? A positive word, not a negation.
More unconditional acceptance for each other.
So more accepting, more open, more unconditional. Mm-hmm. And
more constructive than destructive feedback.
Okay. Yeah. So more growth oriented, right? Constructive is basically growth oriented, where everybody kind of has that goal of making things better, of improving things, of like creating something like better conditions, say maybe for everyone, or like some kind of betterment. Okay, so accepting, openness, and where there's a sort of an growth-oriented kind of attitude or a view of life. Okay. What else would motivate you to become more authentic, to show up in your true self more?
I was going to say to be able to go out socially and have those type of interactions where there's no fear in actually being able to express how we want to be, so that it's sort of like a fear thing of going out socially.
Okay, so what would be a positive description of that?
It's to be able to just be who we are.
Okay, but how would the world need to be for you to overcome that fear? Or how would you need to be?
Accepting of differences.
Okay.
Being able to accept differences and listen to others and feel that they're where they're at, and that's something maybe we could take something from what people are sharing, and to be able to listen openly, and
so
then
like a mutuality.
Yeah, and feeling into what other people are saying, and then feeling how that feels within me, and then being able to express something to contribute to the conversation, or to be able to express how I feel about what's going on without having the fear of being attacked or shunned or laughed at. Or that to me is socially, that
more,
is
more open and less attacking.
Mhm. And that would be, to me, a feeling of being what is socially something to strive for socially with groups of people.
Okay.
That would show that there's a higher consciousness level in society if people would just be able to be who they are and be whatever religion they want to be, and that's okay, but still be able to connect with people regardless of any.
Can we find a positive word for less attacking?
I'll jump in here about supporting each other.
Supportive. Yes.
Mm.
So mutual, open, and supportive.
And honest.
Honest. Mhm.
Yeah,
Honesty.
that's it. Honest heart communication.
Okay, the communication part, that's an expression aspect. So that would be that other people are expressing themselves authentically as well. So basically, you guys just came up with a list of values, yeah, that you want for yourself, that you see as, you know, good values for humans to interact with, and also to interact within this world. Yeah, that allows you to either become more motivated or more courageous or more willing, yeah, to be authentic. The essence of what you just said, guys, I don't know if you could hear this, basically was, well, if everybody was authentic, if everybody would do all these things that I like, yeah, that I want to represent, well, then I would do it too. Do you realize this?
Yeah, I was actually just feeling into that when we were talking about it, and like just kind of soaking myself in those words and those values, and then thinking to myself, well, you know, that's like it might be an ideal, but I'm not doing it.
So there's a little bit of a problem there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, clearly.
So this is a really important insight. I want you to take note of this. Now, we know from psychology and sociology that the way we are conditioned, yeah, so this happens early in our life, and so the really the primary conditioning happens in the first 4 years, 5 years, but up until we are like an adult, 16, 18. Okay, so the way we have been conditioned, yeah, is typically the way we will show up the rest of our life, unless there is something like self-awareness that kicks in, yeah, that makes us want to change. Okay, so here we see some of these values that you guys came up with. Yeah, the opposites, yeah, like what we see the world and other people are showing up as here on the left with the false self, and on the right, yeah, the more authentic, the more true version. Looks, and you see this on your screen right now, right? It looks very, very similar to the things that you just mentioned. Okay? And we just found out, just through this very simple contemplation, that, well, there is an aspect of ourselves that is holding us back from showing up exactly like that. We also had another insight, yeah, on the first layer, and that is that most of the time we choose to show up as our false self. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that we show up exactly like it says here in the black parts, but pretty close. Complaining, focused on the past or future, either superior or inferior, trying to be all intellectual and complex, being stressed and worried about things, feeling alone, needing to improve worth through work or service to others, feeling small and never good enough, feeling ruled by time, doing things for the approval of others, like people pleasing, needing constant attention or validation from others, and often also taking oneself too seriously. Yeah, the truth is, this is how we show up the majority of time. And we have good reasons for it. Let's just be fair to ourselves. Yeah. What is your response, to this awareness making? Why you were showing up this way the majority of time?
They're protection mechanisms.
Exactly. It's because that's how you perceive the world, right? You perceive the world that way, and therefore you're responding to the world with all sorts of protection or with all sorts of coping mechanisms. So if we now look at the step 4, the false self of the Sacred Self-Healing Program, and by the way, because this is such a frequent question, I wanted to show you how you can download the steps and the workbooks in case you weren't aware of that. So when you log into the transCODES forum, and this is only for those of you who signed up for the Sacred Self-Healing Program, okay, who are actually in that program. This is what the transCODES forum looks like. And if you scroll down through the free resources and all that, you come to the section Sacred Self-Healing Community Forum. Resources, member sharing, and questions. And there is a section here that says step downloads, member services, recordings, and resources. This is, by the way, also where you find all the recordings for the workshops that we have done. And you click on step 24 steps, listen and download, and you go to the step 4. Okay, step 4 is false self. All right. And here you have the SoundCloud audio file. You can click on here and download it, and you can click on download workbook pages, and it will download the entire workbook for it. There's a little bit of an archive, links here from previous workshops for a specific step. I hope that you guys are all familiar with this. Okay, so when you download the workbook, you are being sent it in email format. And you open this up on your computer. It looks like this. Can you guys all see this right now? Step 4, false self. Can you guys all see this on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there's this front page which with each step that gives you a little bit of a summary, what this step is about, what the energy fields are that the meditation is working on, and also the modalities that it teaches. So the 4th step spoken by Jeff teaches breathing through the heart, teaches a mirror technique. The mirror technique is needed to become more aware of the responses that you get from the outside world. And the I am breathing. It's a very important step. And it has to do with applying awareness. So as we are coming together here in the study group and we have all these insights, the internalization, the integration of that is that you actually begin to become more aware of this in your day-to-day situations and interactions. Now, it has to do with self-perception and your inner attitude and intention. Okay, and then you find the right up here, the power of making amends and absolution. That is interesting. Anybody ever asked themselves why I wrote it this way? Why I start out with the power of making amends? We just had two pretty profound insights. Namely that we have a whole big list of values that we would like to express, but we're not doing it. And that we are actually blaming the world for not being the way we want it to be, for not doing it. Now, this is sociology, okay? If we all grew up in a world where all these values, that we just looked at, these true self values, where they would be normal, where they would be the standard, well, then it would be a lot easier for us to do so. However, you're starting to feel something here now. Maybe it feels a little discomforting right now. What happened to self-responsibility? What happened to you are responsible for what you put out there? I mean, yes, we all have reasons, due to conditioning, due to trauma and so forth, to modify our behavior and have protective layers. But what if this protective layer that we're cultivating, the false self, this persona that we're cultivating, what if we start identifying with this and then begin to feel that that is who we are? Where it gets transfigured, where we start to believe in our false self as our true self and take the responses that we get from the world as the responses to our true self. In that moment where you realize that ambiguity inside yourself is when you need to contemplate about what you truly want. Because in that moment, you recognize that there is a deep betrayal. Yeah, I'm speaking here spiritually, so it may sound a little poetic, but there's a betrayal that is occurring, namely between you and your true self. So while you have good intentions, what you put out there or what you have been putting out into this world was nowhere near who you want to be. So all the bickering about the victimhood and all that, obviously, in that moment comes back to you. Yes. Mindy. It comes back to you, right? It's like, okay, if this is who you want to be, but you're putting out this other person. And the betrayal aspect comes in when you build a relationship with your true self. With this part that you just tuned into when you were talking about how this, or what is needed for you, to be more authentic. When you build a relationship with your true self, you recognize that your true self is actually something that you shoved in some kind of corner over there, and that the false self is the one that you have been projecting into this world. So as you are building this relationship with your true self, which is a part of you, it's the spiritual self, the mediator between your soul, your inner divinity, and your ego self. Well, You kind of have to admit to that, don't you? How else are you going to reconcile that? If the relationship with your true self is indeed the most important relationship you ever have, just like as if it was a partner, but say this relationship lasts through all your lifetimes, beyond just your physical relationships. If that relationship with your true self is the most important relationship that you have, it's ultimately the relationship with your soul. Okay? Don't you think that there is some kind of accountability needed? This feels a bit discomforting, doesn't it? Give me some feedback, guys. What are the thoughts and the feelings that are going through you right now? Hearing this.
Yeah, no, I'm confused.
Okay.
I'm going to be really honest. I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit it because there's been so much discussion about this for a long time, but I'm feeling very confused between discernment or just discerning between what is my true self and my own sabotage, and then what's external. Like it's funny because I couldn't make it to your call, the last one, and I saw the topic of the video and it hit the nail on the head for me, because I've actually withdrawn myself so much from everything because I've been feeling very this is going to sound so heavy, but I don't know how else to explain it, but I've been feeling like this heavy dark energy coming, like feeding off of my energy or something that's just sapping me, and I'm starting to get a little, I've been very much questioning everybody's motives or everybody's anyway. So, and then I saw your video and it was all about the false self feeding darkness, and then I thought, wow, okay, maybe I've just got myself into such a cycle of some or other negativity that it's actually just me doing this to myself, and it's not actually my sensitivity that's increasing and my awareness that's increasing. And I thought I was picking up on a lot of external negativity because of all this because I'm trying to delve through myself, and that the sensitivity levels have come up. But then I saw your video and it kind of brought me back home to say, well, have a good look at yourself. Maybe it's all just you. So the discernment.
Maybe it's a combination. Maybe it's both. But it's always smart to start with yourself. I clearly showed this in the True Self Talk, how this goes. I said, the more you project, the more you're feeding darkness. Okay? So nothing is static in the spiritual, in the energetic world. Yeah? It's a constant sort of going back.
Fluctuation, yeah.
So the Sacred Self-Healing course is all about us. It's not about how to change the world, how to change others. It's all about us.
But how do you stay in that fluctuation with the world changing?
Well, we're the focal point is self-healing. Okay? So the world is changing. True. The world is always changing. There never is a state where it does not change. Okay? So that's part of our human condition.
I think, sorry, what I mean more is I just don't know what to trust. I don't trust anything anymore, because what you see isn't even necessarily the truth with all this that's being put out there. And I guess I've gone like right back into my shell.
Okay, so we're now talking about the consequences, of the conclusions that you come to, the judgments. Okay, let's say you can't believe anything that is out there. In fact, we all agreed that we only show up authentically in 10% of the time. So that's a pretty good average, okay? If you now look at the world as a whole and all people on it, and everybody just shows up 10% in with truth and 90% with untruth, okay, then the statement is actually pretty accurate. That most of what is out there is not true.
Yeah, that means that the construct that we're rubbing up against in the world is made up of untruth.
Yeah, and we are part of it.
We're in it. So it's not surprising that people are confused and not trusting, and ultimately it's because they don't trust themselves.
Right, and that we can discuss obviously if there is an agenda behind that, and if that is part of a bigger scheme to actually get people into that state, because that's a state where people separate, and ultimately everybody goes against everybody. But there's something different in the statements that you made, Mandy, that I need to point your attention at. Okay, you want it to be your growing sensitivity that picks up on the darkness out there, because if that is the case, then you don't have to take responsibility for your own projections, and that you need to look at. It's both.
Absolutely. I've definitely felt into that, Jona, for sure. But
so
I think
I'm
it's
the
a bit of
first
both,
one.
definitely.
Yeah, I'm the first one who educates people obviously on these energies, and that's why I sound like a broken record talking about collective energies every day, every month. Okay. And yes, they are there, just like weather conditions. And yes, they change, just like weather conditions. But that does not change the fact that we need to find our place here, that we need to take responsibility for what we are putting out there. And once we begin to understand the power that is behind our own intentiveness and our own conscious choice, for example, to stand in truth, well, then we can also see that the world is never, ever going to change. If everybody sits in their hole and says, no, I'm not going out there, I'm waiting for all of that to change. And then maybe I'm going to show up with a little more truth.
Yeah, we can't accept we can't expect the world to be socially acceptable the way we'd like it to be able to show up. We just have to show up as we are and go out there, right?
That's one way of doing it. And another way of doing it is to obviously take all these experiences that we've had, and adjust our conditions accordingly. Don't socialize with people that you can't be authentic with. Just don't go there.
Be able to discern and actually feel into it and go, okay, this is not where my energy wants to be.
Don't do jobs that you hate. Don't live in places where you don't like it. Don't pretend with people that you don't like. Don't try to get approval from people that you actually don't care for, because that is what fosters this inauthenticity or the false.
And then when we know that is how we work, how we've been operating from the false selves, when we can see our projections and see that it didn't get us anywhere but more pain, then we can come back and begin to be more authentic and see that works for us, and we can forgive ourselves. That's when the forgiveness comes in, where I can see where I can go in, and that's where I make amends, because I can feel it when it comes up. And the pain that it did create, that I can't act out like that anymore, because it does cause pain, and that's seeing also like having a forgiveness.
Yeah, so the forgiveness is the internalization of this. So Mandy, what you want, we all want the same. We want discernment, okay? What you want is the outside to change so that you can change.
No, I think what I meant more of, like I said, it brought me back to myself to have a good look at myself. So I'm fully aware of what you mean by taking responsibility. But I think what I'm more stuck with is the discernment of what's my false ego and what's actually external unhealthy toxicity that needs to move. I need to change in my way of doing things in the world.
Julianne just answered that. That's why I was saying, that's why I was pointing at it. Pain. Pain is a way, the pain that we experience in our life. of not being able to connect with people, not finding this peace, this mutuality, this growth, this, all these things that we defined earlier, it becomes painful. All right. And that's a way of life. Yeah. The feedback with the world that we interact with, of life telling us that something isn't right.
Something's got to change. Yeah.
Well, something isn't right. Okay. So maybe it is, the dissatisfaction, say, yeah, pain is maybe a little too harsh for many of you to connect with, but just call dissatisfaction. Yeah, and maybe then it's a little easier for you to connect with. The dissatisfaction comes from not recognizing, yeah, what this feedback, yeah, that we get through interacting and communicating with the world is actually addressing, what that is coming to it. In very simplified terms, we could say that the pain that we're experiencing, the discomfort that we're experiencing, yeah, is the reflection of our false self. What we are experiencing here is that this interaction with the world, yeah, when I present my false self, does not work for me. It is painful for me. Okay? And that's when we need to step in with our conscious choices and need to say, okay, well, I could change the way I put myself out there. I could do that. And that's literally what we have been conditioned to do. But the problem with that is that we have been conditioned to do it in a certain way. And as we are going along in our life and realizing that this doesn't work, this is too painful for me, the way I am presenting myself, well, then it might be the time to reconsider that. So in other words, Mindy, what I'm saying is, it's not all your fault. Yeah, don't go from one extreme to the other. Like it's either all caused by the outside or all caused by you. Either of these extremes is false. Okay, what it is that if you go out in the world and you cannot find connection with other people, you cannot find authentic relationships, you cannot find fulfillment through interacting with the world, then maybe there's something in the way you present yourself to the world. Yeah. And that's always a good point to start, because if you are saying you're not authentic, you have all these protective layers up, yeah, you're hiding in your shell, and then you say, well, and that's why, I do this because the world is so bad, okay, and that is what creates pain in me. Well, then I could as well say, well, then why don't you go try different ways? Come out of your shell and try it in a different way, with different people, with different ways of expressing yourself. So some of you are responding with, with the keyword congruency. Okay, let's just define this real quick. Yeah, what is congruency? What does this mean to be congruent? Does anybody want to offer a definition of that?
When the feeling of what I'm putting out on the outside is congruent with what I'm feeling on the inside.
Yeah, you can't define a word with itself.
Oh, sorry. It's the feeling.
So when it matches up, that's probably what you mean. Yeah, when the way you put yourself out there matches up with the way you truly feel.
Yeah, I think congruence is a resonance with truth, right?
Well, yeah, but it's not an outer truth. We're not talking about outer truth right now. We're talking about our inner truth. We're talking about our true self.
Yes.
And what gives us a positive feedback, what gives us, fulfillment, what gives us contentment is when we can be ourselves. When we can be who we truly are. Yeah, we want to be able to be who we truly are, and we want to interact with others in that way.
just thinking about it, Jona, every time we frown, that's an acknowledgement or an incongruence every single time.
Yes, and sigh
and sigh. I'm sighing all day, every day, particularly around my daughter. It's like, oh my God.
Yes, there's the way we hold ourselves, the way our posture. Mm-hmm. Very important insight. We talked a lot about this in the Love Integrity course, because there it becomes a little more aware to us, because it's just one person, the relationship with one person that we are honing in on. And there we can see, that the problems with our own communication. Yeah, so if we put ourselves out as like, yeah, and this is so hard, and oh, I can't do this, and the world is so bad, and okay, and that is what the other perceives. Okay, and however the other person then responds to is what we put out. The problem with that is that most of us aren't even aware of what we're putting out. So communication is a tricky thing, Mandy. We spent our entire life figuring this out. How we can communicate ourselves more authentically, and that includes our body language, that includes everything about us. Only 7% are the words that we're using. 93% of our communication is through cues, through energy, through resonances, through attitudes, through nonverbal aspects. 93%, guys. So the reason why I'm pointing at self-forgiveness first is because this needs to be the first step. We first need to come to terms here with ourselves. And we're using the true self in this sort of personified form simply because it's a relationship that we are building. Our true self, for the most part, is somewhat perceived as a different me. And the whole point, and this is important to understand this in context with healing, the whole point of, increasing, not just my awareness, but also my well-being, my health, my abundance, etc., is harmonization, is unification. So the first thing that we need to do is to go in and admit this to ourselves. And I think, Julianne, you said that just right now, to reconcile, to clear this up with ourselves, the fact that we are unaware of how we have been putting ourselves out there, how we have been carrying ourselves, how we have been presenting ourselves to the world. How we have not acted congruently. And look at the first sentence here. Can you guys read this? Dear true self, forgive me for I have neglected your guidance. I accept the unawareness of my past, which led to refusing to listen to your hints and clues, denying your existence, and forgetting to ask for your help. Instead, I chose to listen to my false self, my ego, my mind, my fears, and my emotions. I believed in these false projections, those of others and my own, because it was all I could see. I identified with my false self, my defenses and protection, and all its pain, which separated me even more from you. I herewith absolve myself for all I thought, felt, fantasized, and did out of the lack of my awareness in the past. I can now see how useful each of these lessons were. I understand that all justifications are illusions. and that they now don't serve my highest good any longer. From here on, I trust in my true self, in you. As I have nothing to defend, I trust in my awareness and my ability to discern, because I have chosen to listen to my heart. So if you have the workbook for step 4, you can read all the other things around this and what inner unification is and why it's important to unify ourselves with our own truth. Then it shows the whole entire process here. And then there is a worksheet. Now, as you know, I've aligned the Sacred Self-Healing Steps to the 12 steps. Yeah, so I took the 12 steps and could see the resonance here. So step 4 corresponds with step 2 in 12 step. Come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It's a bit poetic, but that's what the origin of step 2 in 12 step says. And I go on to ask the self-healer to make an inventory of false perceptions. Now, we haven't really mentioned the word perception here, but everything that we talked about, Mandy, your confusion, Julianne, your fear, the pain, the defenses, and all that we have formed in interaction with the world, all have to do with our perception of the world. And consequently, all our output, our projections, those are the ones that we put out, were based on these perceptions. So I ask the self-healer to make a list of false perceptions. The world is bad, or people are bad, or I am a victim, or I'm not good enough, and so forth. And then to contrast this with your true needs, your true priorities in life, and your true intentions. This is necessary for you to become a little more aware of what you truly want, how you truly want to present yourself to the world. And the reason why it says priorities here, just as a reminder, is also something that has to do with accountability, because if our priorities change, okay, then our output also changes. So let me give you an example. Someone who has dedicated their entire life to their work, their financial success or their financial security, and prioritize that over their loving relationships. If that person ends up in a place where they feel that they've never really loved anyone, or nobody out there has ever loved them, and they have no friends and so forth, well, there is a component of what this person has cultivated throughout his or her life. You can see that, right? So if your priorities are financial or material security, and you put all your energy into that and neglect, other parts of your life, that would bring more harmony and more love into your life, well, then at some point you will then experience the pain of not having that. So it's interesting for me as a coach to help people recognize that their true priorities and their true intentions often differ. They differ. So there is a harmonization needed, on the inside first, before we can go out there and say, oh, the world is so bad, or the world is treating me unfairly. Now, if someone, on the other hand, prioritizes friendships relationships, yeah, and neglects physical or material or financial wealth. Okay, yeah, and I think that many of you are in that place. Then yes, you will find yourself in a place in life where you constantly have to struggle with money. But you have a lot of friends and you have a lot of loving beings in your life, perhaps also pets. So you see, it's not really the world, that does that to you. Things are not being done to you. The world is responding to you. The world is giving you feedback as to what you are putting out there. And yes, there are some karmic things. There are some things to injustice that occur to us that doesn't seem to correlate with the things that we put out into this world. That's true. But seen from a spiritual perspective, and then even with the energetic perspective, we can see, and you guys have agreed to this many times, that these injustices that occur to us, these curveballs that life throws at us at times, these karmic things, the trauma that we experience and the crisis is often nothing but a true self-intervention in disguise. It is the pain that was sent to us to show us that whatever, the train tracks that we are on here, like where we are headed with what we are putting out there is not authentic. That there's something not adding up. So when I said you have agreed to this, what I meant with this is that many, if not all of you, have already recognized that what appears as the biggest crisis in our life often turns out to be a really, really important turning point in our life that could give us the motivation to finally change something. And sometimes it is the outer conditions that need to be changed. Sometimes we have to get divorced, or we have to move, or we just simply have to quit the job and find something that is more congruent, more authentic, more like we truly needed, like we truly wanted. And sometimes it's just an inner shift that needs to occur. Sometimes it is in the way we communicate ourselves to the world. Instead of hiding in our shell, to become just a little more open and non-judgmental and unconditional, just as we would like the world to be. We are the change, guys. And to sit somewhere and say, well, no, I'm not going to change. I'm going to endure my pain because until the world changes, I'm not willing to do that. Okay? Yeah. We are fundamentally in a false perception. Yes. That's a projection of ourselves. So you see the complexity of this, okay? Yeah, it's never just you and never just the world. It's in the interaction, in the feedback, okay? And we have a wonderful tool as humans, and that's called consciousness. Self-consciousness. Self-consciousness is there for us to get to that place where we can, well, recognize that we have the power to make these changes. We can't just sit there in apathy or in victimhood or in, pointing fingers to the world. Yeah? Because we are not these dependence. Yeah, we are not these powerless beings that we portray ourselves as. We are very powerful beings that have a consciousness, and with that consciousness, we are capable of having these kind of insights. So all it really takes is to think this and feel this through, just like we did here today in the study group. We truly felt into our own statements and thought this all the way through and realized at the end of it that, yeah, most of what we put out there is a projection, is a false self. And yeah, most of what we get back doesn't feel true to us. I wonder why. So what am I saying here? I'm not saying that it's all your fault. I'm saying that you need to step into this interaction more actively. You need to actively participate in life to become more authentic, to become more truthful, partially because you need to still discover that about yourself. Self-discovery is a huge, big part of our journey. Yeah? Who am I? What are the values that I'm standing for? Whom do I want to experience this life as? The core spiritual questions that we, through our lifetimes, not just this life. So by being passive and waiting for something on the outside to happen so that we feel the permission or the courage to step into our true self is what needs to be overcome. Yeah? And we can cultivate this by feeling into, and stepping into that relationship with our true self. That's why I do this, Connect with Your True Self, every month now for 12 years. I just realized 12 times 12, 12 months a year, 12 times, it's 144. 144 true self sessions, free and accessible for everybody. That's quite a bit of relationship building, guys. Yeah. So here in the Sacred Self-Healing course, I take it a step further and ask you to actually start interacting with your true self like it was a person. And here I ask you to write a letter to your true self. Now that you have this insight, as if it was a person that you truly love, and you share these truthful thoughts and feelings that you are having right now with your true self. So this is a very beautiful thing to do. It's very intimate, and it's obviously just for yourself. I do go a step further, though. Not in this step yet. Okay, that's step 5. But you can already ask yourself this. Your false self has served you by giving you certain things, right? Can we just real quick remind ourselves what these projections, how they helped us? They helped to protect us. What else?
Yeah, helped us feel safe.
Helped us feel safe. What else? What are the perceived payoffs? Perceived things.
Gave me a very limited view of myself, which was mainly negative.
All right, that's not a payoff. That's more the consequence of it. Okay, like how did it serve us? How did it serve us? Like, I mean this. How did your false self serve you?
Not having to take responsibility.
Okay, not having to take responsibility, yeah.
Trying to keep things at a status quo, the same.
Status quo, like something like being seen in a certain way.
Yeah.
Feeling more self-esteem.
Yeah.
It allowed me to belong.
Yes. And fit in, right?
Yep.
Maybe with the wrong people, as it turns out, but at least it worked for some time, right? I mean, that's the wiser you, right? Realizing, oh, I tried to fit in with these people, and now I'm realizing they're all like, this isn't even what I wanted. But no, we got to be fair here with ourselves. Yeah, that's how our false self is serving us. Sometimes my false self has also helped me gather or muster more courage than I actually have by faking things. Fake it till you make it. You know that proverb? Okay. But just making myself do it and pretend I have it all figured out. Yeah. And when you cultivate this, what happens is that you actually do figure it out. So it's not all bad. Okay. But it's the awareness of it. You need to know, and Mandy, that's where you get confused because you do not know the difference anymore. Yeah. You need to know when you're true to yourself and when you're using your false self like a piece of clothing. Yeah. Or a work uniform as a tool. You can use projections as a tool. You can use, certain personas in order to represent something. Yeah. So for example, here with you guys, I'm, a self-healer like you. And because I've been doing this for so long and I've studied this, I've dedicated my life, I made that a priority in my life, I'm in a position to guide you through this. When I go to my school, well, I'm the principal, okay? So I'm a completely different person there. Not completely, because my values are the same, and obviously the school itself is built on those values. Yeah, but I'm a different person there. When I'm a mom, I'm a different person. When I'm a wife, I'm a different person. I'm always the same true self. And I'm making an effort throughout all these different areas in my life to be as authentic as I can. But I do have to play certain roles. Right? With my 9-year-old, I have to play mom. I would much rather like to be his friend. But because I'm his mom, I have to protect them. I have to do certain things. So I am in that role. Now with my 25-year-old, I'm more like a friend because my 25-year-old doesn't really need that protection anymore. It's much more important for her to live her own life according to her values. So I'm giving her that unconditional love by not interfering. So you see, don't run into the mistake of seeing everything in this sort of dualistic way, good and bad. All right? We don't teach good and bad here. We only teach true and not true and how to discern this. Self-healing is based on knowing truth. Yeah. You cannot heal what you cannot feel. You need to know what it is that needs to be healed. And guess what part of you is allowing you to reveal what needs to be healed? It's your consciousness. So you have to train your consciousness in order to heal yourself. And those of you who are familiar with Ayurveda, for example, anybody here familiar with Ayurveda? With the old Sanskrit and Indian healing techniques, that are thousands of years old? what is the main sort of mantra wise wisdom of Ayurveda? Does anybody know?
It's balancing out the day.
That's the approach. That's the approach. But the actual statement about what healing is.
Self-knowledge.
Yes, self-knowledge. It's a different word for consciousness. The self-knowledge that your consciousness is what does the healing. And I'm going to use that to close our first study group. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for participating and asking questions and commenting. Don't take anything personal if I point at you and your statements, because when you go into that kind of study, all right, you need to become very precise. All right. So every word that you say, every expression that you bring, I will hold the mirror of consciousness to you. And that's not something that you need to be afraid of. It is something that helps you to recognize the parts in you that you cannot see. Yeah. Just as a little feedback, guys, how did you like, or how do you like this format? Such a study group that goes a little deeper beyond just the sort of popular. Okay, I see all your hearts.
I love it.
You love it. Do you guys have any suggestions, like maybe things that you would like to do? Maybe like subjects that certain subjects that you want to have addressed, like a procedure. Maybe we should use like an hour before the study group to submit subjects, topics that you want to discuss. I'm saying this because it's here, this Daily Sacred Self thread is an ongoing thread. Yeah, so let's do this, guys.
One of the things that would help me, Jona, because I'm in the early learning stage, is if you know ahead of time what's going to be discussed, I wonder if you could tell us the step and I could go through the workbook.
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
I'm not going to do that.
Or I was thinking I could meditate more.
Well, no, not out of spite or anything like this, Linda, but it really isn't about this cognitive part. It isn't about you preparing. I will, if I mention certain tools, I will always show them and explain them so that as you're here, you will at least know where to look this up. Okay? Yeah? So obviously I'd be a bad teacher if I just sort of say things and then give you guys no references. This is designed to be a study group, which means we want to dive a little deeper. It's actually for those who have already worked the steps, who've already worked the workbook. But everybody else is welcome as well. Okay? Yeah, because consciousness, yeah, doesn't have anything to do with any program. We all have consciousness, and if you just sort of follow the steps that I'm guiding you through in this study group, you should be able to follow it. So you don't need this, Linda. Your mind may believe that you need sort of this intellectual preparation.
Yes, my ego wants to get it right.
Yes, but the thing is, I don't want your ego here. I only want your consciousness here. And that one I can only get to if I ask you to feel into something right now. Right now. Because you know what? The problem with our ego is, and that's part of the problem with the false self, is that your ego is mostly wrong. You know? So no matter how hard your ego tries, Okay. I give you an A+ for being a good student if that makes your ego happy. Okay, yeah. But when we come together here in the study group, I want you guys to actually do it with me online as we are talking about it. I want you to feel and think for yourself. I don't want you to be good repeaters.
Thank you for the gentle pokes.
Yeah, I don't want you guys to become good memorizers. I want you to become good consciousness trainers. Yeah, in the moment. All right, everyone. I love it. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. Okay.
I loved it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Jona.
See you again next Monday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.